Hello, everyone. I'm Gary Gomes. I've been doing astrology on this channel for a while now, but a couple of years, and hopefully it'll grow much larger than it is. We have a special guest today. This is my cat, Marbles. Say hello, Marbles. Okay. All right. All right. So Marbles is the cuteness component on the show, and she's very loyal and she's a good kitty. Right? Okay. All right, so we'll try not to let Marbles down show too much today, or the broadcast too much today. But she is adorable. All right, so we have, and maybe it's nice we have a little kitty on the show because we had such a rough week in the United States. I'm making this recording, and if we look back to around, and interestingly enough, at least to me, the last broadcast I put out, I spoke about a really negative line heading through Washington D.C. and um, sadly, it turned out to be very true. So we have Congress who's really uh, annoyed isn't the proper word. They're really um, they want to get this president out as quickly as possible. They don't even want to wait for the term to be up. The other thing is you did finally have Trump concede, but the word concession never came out of his mouth, if you notice. And also you had basically an attack on Congress. And I'm not using um, certain words deliberately, not because I'm trying to um, avoid the situation, but because I just don't. I want to. I want to wait for investigations to come out and for people who study the situation to actually make a reasoned determination of what happened, as opposed to uh, shouting inflammatory words online. So that's my disposition. I do not like making people more upset than they already are. I don't think it really solves anything. It may make you feel good temporarily, but anger just builds upon anger, and it really doesn't help the situation at all. Uh, so I just want to look first of all at July 7th, just briefly, because it's or July 6th, excuse me, just briefly, because it was an important day. You know, it's not really, things like that don't happen every day, right? So let's see if I can share the screen. And my laughter is more nervous laughter. It's not really, I'm not making fun of the situation. Uh, and so, and I will go back and say one thing I should not have done about 3 years ago was fixate myself on a prediction for an election. Because what happens is you tend to get married to that prediction. And I was looking at the stats coming out this year and saying it didn't look as good as I thought it did for Trump. And I also said 3 years ago that if he got sick, then he might not make it into office. My meaning at that time was if he got sick and seriously ill, he wouldn't be reelected. The definition of seriously ill is up to the observer. He did get seriously ill, physically ill, and there was a serious illness in terms of a pandemic in the country. So I think those two things are mild qualifiers to my prediction 3 years ago that Trump would get reelected. But I can't actually say that that my prediction worked out as I stated it would. So honesty is the best policy, and it's also very important to recognize failures when they do occur so you can learn from them. And all of us are still learning. I'm certainly still learning. I've been doing this 30 years, but there is so much depth to astrology that it's good, I think, once in a while for somebody to come back and say, well, I didn't take this into account, or I got this wrong. And that helps. I hope that helps put trust in the astrologer, not kind of like fudging around. So let's go back to January 6th. I have the January 8th date here. Also, one thing I want to say, and this is sort of like a stream, you know how I work, except when I'm doing the months, I do sort of a stream of consciousness broadcast, which I hope isn't annoying to people, but that's the way I function basically. Um, and so let's say I'll set it for, I think it was around 3 o'clock. I can't remember the exact time. And Washington, D.C. Now, yes, yes, Daddy's typing into the computer. You're a sweetheart. So I hope you can see the screen. I'm going to stop the share and start it again because I did get some people saying they couldn't see the chart when I shared it. All right, so this is, okay, so this is the chart for Tuesday afternoon, basically. This is around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, if you look at the chart, it's not really, I mean, it's not exceptionally weird chart. The moon's in a nakshatra called Hasta. Out to enter Chitra nakshatra, which is a very, it's a world building nakshatra actually, but it's ruled by Mars. Hasta is ruled by the moon. And if you look at, we still have that weird little cluster of planets between Jupiter and Saturn. Now, Jupiter is outside of the range of planetary war. Mercury's combust, which is not an unusual phenomenon. But if you look at the chart, you'll see this kind of strong Mars in a nakshatra called Ashvini, or Ashvini, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Rahu is in Marigashira, which is a Mars-like nakshatra. Okay, so this will essentially give urges to deconstruct things. The Jupiter-Saturn conjunction encourages people to deconstruct things. If I'm looking at Venus, we had a Venus-Ketu conjunction just pass a couple of days earlier. Venus is in, which is essentially the most destructive nakshatra um, in the sky. So we're looking for anything that would cause that kind of activity. Is this cluster over here, which is in the second house of speech and the third house of expression. Okay, so Venus, what does Venus do as a planet? Well, there's an old story about Venus, and Venus essentially goes around, or the incarnation of Venus through Vishnu, Parashurama, is very different from how Western astrology views Venus. Venus is, Parashurama is Rama with a battle axe. So he's a priest, and he finds out that his family and his father have been murdered by, essentially by rulers. So his father's a Brahmin priest, and he decides to take his battle axe out and destroy all of that particular class of people 3 times over. So if we're looking for a trigger, for any kind of a trigger, we're looking at this kind of ticked off Venus, which actually does seek revenge. For any of you who've ever been in a relationship, you know, it has like beautiful sides to it. It also has, to be honest, often vicious or really um, harmful sides to it. So essentially, if I were to look at any, especially given the rising sign being around in Libra and Venus being in the same sign as a Brahmi planet attacking the ruling caste, which in India are the warrior caste, attacking the warrior caste, and also bastions of safety being threatened. Uh, it's pretty clear that it would have been something happening on that day. Also, keep something in mind: Mars and Saturn are aspecting Libra. This action, this resentment towards the government, I think, and resentment towards fair play will last for resentment towards, excuse me, that wasn't the word I want to use. Resentment towards people in authority and the courts and every institution is in danger for the next couple of years, but more strongly because Saturn and Mars are aspecting Libra over the next couple of months. So we're really not going to see an end to this until until a couple of months from now. And I'm not saying you're going to see another event quite as striking as this. Mula Nakshatra over here, this is a kind of a nasty combination. In the Navamsha chart, Venus is in Mars sign. In the Samsha chart, Mars is with Rahu, so that's sort of like a mob rule kind of a combination. The Saturn Mars aspect indicates to me that this was planned. It wasn't something that was spontaneous, but I don't know by who. And I'm not saying that to be coy. I don't know by who. Whether it was the protesters, whether it was somebody else, I can't. From this chart, I can't say. And I'm not espousing conspiracy theories like Antifa caused or anything like that. That's not what I'm talking about. But it was definitely planned because Mars is a strategic planet. It very rarely strikes without some kind of a plan of action. Okay, so just remember that. If we look at the time and space, you can this is short. So we have really nothing passing through Washington D.C. You know, we have Mars passing through Texas, Mexico, and we also have well, the moon is waxing right now. We have the Scandinavian countries and up through northern Russia, but it would really be a stretch for me to say Russia was behind this. We do have Venus and Rahu lines passing through China. So, and again, I'm not saying that China was involved in this either. Um, we have a Mars line passing right through India, so there'll probably be some civil unrest there, but we're going to look at that for today's date as opposed for this date. But basically, this was a little bit like built up pressure in a system. Whoops. And that's what I think happened. But again, was there a plan behind it? Yeah. I mean, I don't think you spontaneously built pipe bombs or Molotov cocktails. I'm not that naive. Uh, and was there a conspiracy on the part of the police? I don't think so. I really, really don't think so. And the main reason I'm saying that is because Mars is pretty much unblemished It's not negatively aspected by any planet. It doesn't look like that to me at all. Um, so let me stop the share and stop this particular share and try to go back and pull up something which is a little bit more, a little cleaner. And if I look at the chart, so like I said, I don't think I, I know some people think the police were involved. I don't. K2 in the second, K2 is sort of like senseless. So if they prepared materials, if people had prepared materials with the idea of causing disruption, that was probably there. So I think, and compared to the vast number of people who were in Washington, that was a very small group that invaded Congress. So that group may have come with the idea of doing what they did. Um, the rest of the protesters, no. The other thing is, and was there an invisible hand leading everything? Well, if we have the sun in the third house, the first inclination is to say the president. But again, like I said, the ninth house lord is Mercury. So that's the leader of this chart. So this is something which was done. It was done unwisely because Jupiter's debilitated. It was done at a low level. Saturn will do things at a low level. It wasn't done at the highest level. So, so some people may get upset with me for saying that. That's okay. They can get mad at me. They can get, they can get infuriated at me. I don't care. Uh, I think, I think what I don't want to offend anybody, but at the same time, we need to chill and find out exactly what happened. The other thing is, if we go to, let me just close this window. My apologies. Go to today's state, and I just want to look at Donald Trump's chart for just 1 second. Okay. Well, the question is whether he's going to even last for another week, not even until the 20th. Okay, so Mr. President Trump is in. He's in a Rahu Mercury moon subperiod right now. He'll be in a Rahu Mercury Mars subperiod. That's where he is right now. So everybody's angry at him, obviously. His Mars is pretty well placed. 117 to, yeah, they'll try. They're going to try to eject him by the 17th, if not earlier. Will it be successful? I don't think so. I think at this particular time, especially given January 20th is a moon subperiod, he'll be heard, but I don't think he'll be impeached. I just, you know, this chart is not a good chart for him. Let me be honest with you. This is not a good sequence for him. But if I look at his chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, he's got Jupiter in the 6th house with Saturn and Mercury right now. 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got Sun and Venus in the 5th house. And his moon is debilitated. His moon is in very bad shape. So, and K2 afflicts his moon, but K2 is exalted in this chart. So it seems unlikely that they would do this. If I'm honest, I think if they do it, they'll risk more violence. That's just my opinion. I'm not advocating for that. That's just my opinion. And it's entirely possible somebody may try to kill him during this period between the 17th and the 25th, or may try to attack him. So, but K2 is really kind of an interesting planet because, from my experience, from my personal experience, it does tend to remove people, and it does tend to put them out of commission. So I'm going to roll back that comment about somebody attempting to assassinate him because I think that's a little bit inflammatory. I don't like that kind of language. But K2 can indicate that kind of activity. But the idea is to humiliate him, to make him feel powerless, and I think that's what the attempt will be. I don't think the K2 subperiod. Is it possible they'll get him out? Yeah, but it's going to have to be really fast. So their best chances of doing it are between the 14th and the 17th. But there'll be a lot of anxiety between January 9th and January 12th. Okay, so let's go back to more life is close to us. So let's go over here. I'm not going to say anything about running in 2024 or anything like that. I'm gonna wait before I start to get into that. Wait at least a few months before I talk about that again, or anything like that. The right now, as we talk, Mars is in the first house, Saturn's in the 10th, so we have that strong, and the Moon is still in Libra, so that's where a lot of the anger and call for justice is coming from, because Mars is in the Moon, Mars is aspecting the Moon, Saturn's aspecting the Moon. It'll switch signs tomorrow, so over the next few days, expect people to be a little bit down. The other thing I'm going to caution people about is, and this is in a reflection on Joe Biden or anybody, I still think the United States is in a kind of a precarious period over at least the next 10 to 15 years. And the reason I say that is because essentially we're in the same Mahadasha we were in when the Revolutionary War started, and we're in the same major planetary period we were in when a lot of the reforms happened during Teddy Roosevelt's administration. It's closer, the planetary combinations are closer to the Revolutionary War than they are towards reform. So it looks like to me like it's going to be bumpy over the next few years. If we're talking about things like COVID-19, COVID-19 has really proven to be very, very resilient as a virus. We are having vaccines come out. There are a few reports of the vaccines having adverse side effects. There hasn't been anything really outstandingly shocking about these results. And I think the vaccines are going to work by and large. I'm still saying we're going to see a lot of different cures coming up and a lot of innovative cures coming up around April. You will see what I would call a kind of resurgence towards the end of the year. And one of the reasons I'm saying that is because Jupiter will move back into Capricorn. That'll make it a little bit tougher to fight. But I still think largely this will be over. You'll see the signs of this being over by the end of April, and even more so by September of 2021. Some astrologers I know are more pessimistic. I've always been more optimistic than other astrologers have been on this particular illness. But I think you'll see it almost entirely wiped out by 2022. Which is a fairly safe prediction. But you'll see pockets coming up in different parts of the world. And also, at least from the chart, I'm looking at right now, you're going to see um, more medical problems. I would say more, and this isn't criticizing doctors, but more medical mismanagement over the next uh, few weeks because of the Jupiter Saturn conjunction. It's not really something that's one of the reasons why the vaccine rollout is taking longer than anticipated. After April, it'll start to really move quickly, and you'll see several different vaccination uh, forms. You see, there are three prominent ones right now. You'll see a ton of them coming out, and you'll also see more effective amelioratory treatments after um, the end of April. So I'm optimistic about that. The economy, I'm not quite so optimistic about. We're in a Saturn subperiod right now in the United States chart, and I'm hoping that the checks do come out and the people start sending money to people. The government starts sending money to people pretty quickly, sooner rather than later, because Saturn subperiods tend to coincide with recessions, and you won't come out of that for about another. Um, Let me just check the U.S. chart quickly. Hopefully this will show up. Stop the share and start the share again. Okay, so we have U.S. chart, Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury are in the second house right now, along with Pluto, which is in the same sign in the United States. It was in when the United States was founded. I've heard a lot of objections to this chart because of various reasons. I tend to stick with it basically because it works, and I'll choose anything that works over something that doesn't work quite that well. With the full knowledge, you can make a lot of different charts work. So we're in Saturn. If you look over here, you'll see a Rahu Saturn subperiod extends really until um, February 19th. And right now, so between January 9th, we were in. I just want to look at the US chart for see what's happening on January 7th. So January 7th, we were in a Venus subperiod. So Venus is pretty much the critical planet um, that caused the problems over the past week. Um, and let me just go back a couple of days. 5 and 1, 2, just a couple of days. Sorry about that, folks. This. All right, so January 6th, we were in a January 6th, we were in a Venus moon period. So essentially, really until around, so our moon is, the United States is also in a period called the 7.5 year period of Saturn, which is usually a difficult period for. Last time we were in this period was in the 1990s. And we had not that bad a time of it economically, but there seems to be a lot of scandal and a lot of uncertainty. So the economy was doing pretty well. So I don't see the economy really doing quite as badly as some people do. Like some people are forecasting like decades of hardship. I don't see it actually extending that far, but for the next year or so, it'll probably be kind of tough. The other thing is, actually, for the next one, now we will get bump ups in the U.S. Um, and we'll get bump ups really around, I would say around November. I would even say after April 16th, you'll see the economy start to bump up a little bit. Um, September 11th, um, you'll see some shifts or upsets in the economy. And November 10th, you'll start to see another bump up in the economy when we enter Venus in a sudden sub period. But the economy is going to be a little bit wobbly until about 2023. Then it'll turn itself around. The interesting thing, I think, about these next 2 years, though, is you'll see increasing attention put on the media in the United States mainly because Saturn is aspecting Mercury and Rahu, and in particular big tech. Um, and it really won't fall out of that until around 2020, late 2021. And you will see more regulatory impulses directed at big tech, including, um, oh gosh, trying to think of the right word. Efforts to break up these companies, efforts to regulate these companies. Um, right now, the emphasis has been on, from both sides of the spectrum, on whether or not what their responsibility is to regulate content versus what they should leave alone. And some people are upset that they're censoring content. Other people are upset that they're not censoring enough content. For me, the bigger issue is that they're pretty much um, monopolistic. And I realize I'm working on a channel which works in those areas. So I'm not saying that that anybody should that that I that I dislike any of these networks, but competition usually tends to breed better products. It's sort of like a staple idea. So you'll see an attempt to regulate, especially over the next year, or hyper regulate. And after around November 2021, you'll start to see an attempt to um, break up or slice up uh, uh, these businesses. And this isn't just happening in the United States. This is happening globally. It's not it's not unique to us. The other thing is, after September of 2023, you'll start to see a lot of focus on media and what they've done and what kind of control they have or don't have over people. So it's going to be an interesting few years. Um, so this is a slow, stable period. Saturn periods tend to be slow and stable. They tend to be more more even keeled. The expectations are lowered. It's not quite as much of a let's get up and go, but it is a period in which you as an individual can actually take control of your lives and start to do things you want to do, but through hard work. So Saturn periods are actually good for making concrete activities or wishes real. They actually manifest. So Jupiter's is the ideal. It goes for what you want to have happen in your life. Saturn makes you realize what kind of work or what kind of effort you're going to have to put in to do it, and it'll make people focus a lot more on what kind of effort they have to do. They have to make. Excuse me. So that's good for the United States. It's good. It's it's a difficult period because this entire Rahu Mahadasha, as I've said before, it'll be a disruption in the way that the United States is even put together, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that in a destructive sense. And it is right. Bye. I'm not saying that in a destructive sense. I'm just saying it'll be like a reformation, basically. So we're not going to go to a dictatorship. We're not going to go to an autocracy. We're not going to go to a plutocracy. I don't think. I think we're actually already in a plutocracy, to be honest. But we'll be going more towards a reconfiguration. It's interesting that the pandemic has actually caused us to rethink how we do things. Like I'm working remotely. I've worked remotely for quite a few years, but a lot of people are working remotely and they find they can get away with it. So people obviously miss human contact, but they find they can actually be as productive working remotely, which I think is going to change the face of work in this country for a long, long time to come. So, so let's go back to the actual chart for today. One thing I did want to say numerologically, because numerology is also one of the things I dabble in. Actually, was the first thing I ever researched. Back when I was 19, I started looking at tarot. Tarot was actually the first thing. I didn't like it very much then, to be truthful. I do tarot now, though, as a matter of course. And the other thing I got into around the age of 21 was numerology. And numerology has always struck me as being really, really interesting because it lines up very strongly with planets. So we were in 2020 last year, which was a 2020 year. 22 is a master number, okay? But it also adds up, at least in Hindu mythology, at least using Harish Johari's system, it adds up to 4, which is a Rahu year. So essentially it disrupts everything. It just sort of screws up everything. And so nobody's happy with what's going on. There's panic, there's confusion, there's disappointment. Kind of sums up last year pretty well. Okay. This year will be a 5-year. And at least in Harish Johari's in B.V. Raman's system, that's a Jupiter year. Harish Johari's system, that's a Mercury year. What's the difference? Well, a Jupiter year means that's when wise people take over and you get guidance from people who are experts. And you can certainly see that, at least that's the tilt of what we're seeing. That's what we're being told right now. I like Johari's system better because it's 5 and it's a Mercury year. So what does that mean? Well, essentially the floor is going to keep on shifting underneath us. So we'll be trying this strategy and this plan and that plan. And it's not going to be based upon, it'll be based upon whatever works at the time theory, okay? It won't be based upon an ideological system. It'll be based more upon a practical whatever works at the time. So you'll see a lot of ups and downs, not as bad as in a Rahu year. Rahu years tend to be irritating and frustrating as hell. Mercury years will be changeable. You'll have changes in communication. You'll have changes in structures. You'll have changes in messaging. So don't be surprised if in the first few months of the administration you see a lot of changing messages coming out of the White House. It's not something they really have any control over. And I'm going to say this deliberately. No matter who's president, these 2020 and 2021 are going to be a little bit screwed up. Okay, I'm just being flat out honest with you. They do give us, now, one of the interesting things that I've noticed through the years is that chaos is actually a great teacher. It teaches you adaptability. It teaches you how to adjust to situations. It teaches you how to improvise. Okay, so if you don't have the answer, so a lot of the old rules tend to get thrown away. They tend to get pushed to the side. And you have to learn a certain amount of flexibility. Okay, so you need to bend, you need to sway. So I think that for those who are willing to bend, who are willing to sway, who are willing to learn, this will be a good year. Those who want to keep on doing things the way they've always done them, which is understandable, will have a tougher time of it. But again, Mercury years are a great way to build up an entirely new reality around your life. And I mean that in a positive way. So you'll get more opportunities, you'll get more chances to try new things. It'll be terrific. If you don't like change, if you don't like hard work, this isn't going to be a good year for you. But if you can adjust your mindset to, I can learn from this, I can grow, I can have a better life than I have, it'll be a terrific year for you. So if we're looking at today's chart, I just want to look at today's chart. Mars aspects Moon. Mars and Rahu's in the second house from Mars. Rahu's in really what's considered to be its exalted sign in most Vedic astrology texts. I still think it functions extremely well there. There are certain disagreements. And Ketu is in what's considered to be its exaltation sign as well. So Ketu will tend to be, the reactions this year will tend to be extreme. Okay, so that's not going to go away. So you'll see it's a very strong polar schism um, in the world right now between um, conservative groups and liberal groups and leftist groups and far right groups. So essentially, for a person like me who sort of like is in the middle of the road, it's really because I like to look at everybody's point of view and like to consider everybody's point of view, and I don't like to be told I'm an enemy because I don't agree with you. It's really just because I don't agree with somebody doesn't mean I'm their enemy. But that seems to be the kind of mindset we're in right now, and I think that that's gonna eventually that'll tend to taper off. But it's Rahu. Rahu always tends to like to stir up trouble. That's Rahu's nature. So this is going to go on for a while. But overall, from this chart, we have a lot of focus on work, a lot of focus on taking action, getting things done, and this will be true over the next few weeks. At the time of the inauguration, which will be January 20th, one second. And I apologize for making this so US based, but I just wanted to, there's a lot happening in the US right now. And so the time of the, yeah, Joe's going to have a tough first year. Okay, so at least in the chart, Moon Mars, a lot of action, a lot of action, a lot of enemies, to be truthful. If this chart shows up, the Lord of the seventh house is in the ninth house, so that'll be advantageous to partnerships that he forms with people. And the United States will probably do well with partnerships with other countries. But with a Mars Moon conjunction in Aries, where Mars is going to essentially be stronger than the Moon, you're going to see a lot of conflict this coming year. That this won't go away with a change of presidents. And I'm not saying that um, to be nasty. Anyway, I'm just saying that to be truthful with you. This will persist for a few years. The other thing is we have Saturn as kind of a dominant planet in this chart because Saturn's in its own sign, Mars is in its own sign. So this is going to be kind of an aggressive year, at least for the first year of his presidency, and I think actually for his entire presidency. So I would not be surprised to see a lot of attacks um, on Biden, a lot of attacks coming out of his camp as well. It'll be extraordinarily adversarial, and if we're looking at his health, I'm more than, as I said before, I'm more than a little bit worried about his health because the chart we have from him, even if it is incorrect, it really isn't a good chart. So, or at least right now, and his history tends to indicate that he has had periods of bad health after he achieves major goals in life. So I'm not wishing that on him. That's just from what I've seen from this chart. Um, the other thing is, so let's go back to the chart for you guys out there, and I'll wrap this up with forecast for you. I mean, the good thing is the country will be very determined. It'll be very aggressive, but it'll still be divided. That's not going to go away fast. Anybody who thinks that's going to happen quickly is they're wrong. Um, would I like it to go away fast? You bet your life I would. I just don't think that's what the planets indicate. All right, so for the chart, I'm going to start with right now. As I'm speaking, we have Mars in the first house. Oh, and I'll look at trouble spots too. So Aries should have a strong couple of weeks ahead of it. This will be through, let's say, January 20th. And because I'll put out another broadcast, I'll be putting out more broadcasts, shorter broadcasts than this as planetary changes come up. But Mars is in Aries, Saturn's in the 10th house. So career-wise, Aries should do extremely well. Aries Sun should do extremely well over the next couple of weeks. Changeability in relationship life, they'll be attracted to a couple of different people. But overall luck is good for this sign over the next couple of weeks. Money should be a point of dissatisfaction, though, and will continue to be. For Taurus, this sign will have continued problems with relationships, but will also be considered very attractive and very lucky over the next few months. They'll have a lot more responsibilities than normal in their chart. Third house, that's Gemini. Gemini is um, again, it'll draw in a lot of romantic involvements, but it'll also be sensitive and easily hurt as a result of these romantic involvements. The Cancer, career-wise, should do well with part-time jobs, but it'll be spending too much. Leo has changeable moods. There'll be arguments at home. Good luck from past efforts. Also, they should watch out for health issues, minor health issues. But career-wise, they should be doing pretty well. Virgo has money, more money coming in. They'll be braver than normal. They'll have a lot more happiness at home. They'll have a lot more luck. Uh, Past accumulation, past work, they'll have a lot more work to do, but they'll also be happier. And Mars in the 8th house, there is some indication they could be hurt by relationship partners or taken advantage of by relationship partners. Rahu in the 9th, very strong religious ambitions and very strong ability to fulfill those things. Moon is in Libra. This makes Libra very career oriented, difficult to understand. Um, Strong ambitions for personal happiness, strong ambitions for success, um, and a lot of extra work to do at home and on the job. Mars is in the seventh house. There'll be fights with relationship partners, but they'll also be drawn to very stronger, charismatic relationship partners. Rahu is in the eighth. Be fascinated with occult or investigative things. And career-wise, they should be in good shape because the Moon, Lord of the 10th house, is in the first house. Scorpio, K2 is in the first house. Sun and Venus are in the second house, so good for money, good for status, good for success. Saturn is in the third house, along with Mercury, Jupiter, and our friend Pluto, and that'll make this sign braver, more communicative, more willing to talk to people. Mars is in the sixth. They'll have a lot of self-doubt. They'll be very competitive, but they'll also have a lot of self-doubt over the next couple of weeks. Rahu is in the seventh house. Again, some difficulty, maybe overambition on the part of people who they're in relationships with. Career-wise, they should do well. They'll have a lot of drive and a lot of ambition. Capricorn, Saturn's in Capricorn for the next year and a half or so. So this sign will dominate pretty much every other sign. Mercury and Jupiter are there as well. It'll also spend more money. It'll also be more willing to go into debt. Relationship problems, fights at home do hurt this sign for the next couple of months, and children will seem to be greedy or ungrateful over the next few months. But there will be unexpected gains of income, and career life should be good. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Mars in the third house, so again, more ambition, more drive, more get up and go. Rahu's in the fourth. They'll want to be somewhere else than where they are. They'll want to be moving or. And in terms of career, they'll be wanting to change career, but not really sure which direction they want to go into. Lucky though, the moon is in the ninth house. It does give great luck. It'll give additional media exposure to the sign. And sun is in the 11th house. It should give financial gains. However, Aquarians will feel like they have to spend more money than they feel they should, and that shows up over here. Pisces will be more aggressive, again, prone to victimization in relationships, and also very ambitious. Moon is in the eighth house, so there'll be some feeling of dissatisfaction with happiness in life or searching for something deeper. K2's in the ninth house. Luck will be a little bit spoiled this month, but basically we preserved at the last minute. And we have Sun, Venus in the house of career, which is very good. They'll tend to charm their career partners pretty well. And Saturn, Mercury, and Jupiter are in the 11th house, indicating good gains. Now, let's look at the map for the world. And the problem spots I'm seeing are, again, close to Washington, D.C., okay, over the next couple of months, over the next couple of weeks. And there'll also be disputes or some, I know there are recalls going on in certain states, excuse me, and this one looks like the Michigan recall over here. And I'm not seeing the California recall. Oh, yeah, I am seeing the California recall picking up some steam over here as well. In terms of Venus, Arizona will be in pretty good shape. Mexico will be in pretty good shape. This really isn't a bad transit for them, although they should watch out for earthquakes, at least in Mexico. Saturn Jupiter lines pass through Canada, go all the way over through the UK, through France, Spain, and into Africa, throughout Africa. So expect to see economic problems in those countries, and also rulership problems in both Brazil and in Spain and in the west coast of Africa. Mars lines expect to see violence in Germany, Italy, and through parts of North Africa. In terms of moon sign is going over Turkey right now, so the moon will tend to make Turkey do well in the entertainment industry, but it will cause some anxiety over financial growth. Rahu is going over, it looks like just to the southeast of Iran, and so that'll cause some disruption there, and maybe some threats to government in Russia. The only thing we have happening in India is really a Venus line passing through, which is relatively good, but it'll also cause some disruption in local governments, especially on the west coast of India. We have a sun line passing through China and what used to be called Indochina, like Thailand, Laos, that part of the world, and also and we have a Mars line passing close to Vietnam. So you could see some military conflict with China, with these countries, especially in Southeast Asia. Also, Indonesia looks like it's a little bit beleaguered over here. And yeah, and Western Australia. So is Japan. So those are the trouble spots I'm seeing around the world. Some problems with water in Eastern Australia. All right, so that's it for me for this week. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer. You can contact me at 508-525-0001 or at Crystal Expectations in New Bedford. We will have more videos. School is still coming. The school is actually here already. I just haven't set up the classes. And I will be teaching more courses at Kepler College. And you can contact me through Facebook or through neivas@comcast.net. All right, that's it for this particular show. I wish you all health, wealth, happiness, and peace of mind. Don't get worried by what's going on. Peace of mind. Cultivate tranquility, cultivate understanding, cultivate all those things, and we'll get through this together. Okay? All right. Thanks a lot, folks, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Namaste.